The architect's secret. The morning sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of Between the Lines, casting golden rectangles across towers of books that Emma Rodriguez had carefully arranged. She hummed softly while organizing the poetry section, her fingers dancing over worn spines that held countless love stories, though none quite like her own. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up to see Marcus walking in with his usual gentle smile, work boots scuffed and a thermos of coffee in his weathered hands. His dark hair was slightly tousled from the construction site where he claimed to work as a contractor, and there was something endearing about the way he always paused to wipe his feet on the mat, even when they were clean. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, his voice carrying that warm rasp that made her heart flutter every single time. "Thought you might need this." He handed her the thermos, their fingers brushing in a way that still sent electricity up her spine after 8 months together. Emma accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the perfect blend he somehow always managed to create. "You spoil me, you know that?" She stood on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek, breathing in his familiar scent of sawdust and something uniquely him. "Someone has to," Marcus replied, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Besides, watching you light up over little things is the best part of my day." His eyes held that tender look that made her feel like the most precious thing in the world, despite her second-hand clothes and the modest life she'd built from nothing. They had met when Marcus came looking for architecture books, claiming he wanted to understand the theory behind the structures he helped build. Emma had been charmed by his genuine curiosity and the way he listened intently when she recommended her favorites. Their first date had been a walk through the old part of town, where Marcus pointed out interesting building details while Emma shared stories about the neighborhood's history. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, settling into the worn armchair by the window where he often sat while she worked, "about that little house we saw for sale on Maple Street. The one with the front porch and the garden that needs work." Emma's heart skipped. They had been talking about their future more lately, painting pictures of a simple life together filled with books, home-cooked meals, and maybe children someday. The house on Maple Street had become their symbol of hope, affordable, full of character, and perfect for two people who valued love over luxury. "The realtor called yesterday," she said, unable to hide her excitement. The price dropped again. "With our savings combined, we might actually have enough for the down payment by spring." Marcus's expression flickered with something she couldn't quite read. Was it uncertainty? Fear? But it passed so quickly she almost thought she'd imagined it. "That's wonderful," he said, though his voice seemed slightly strained. "We should celebrate tonight. How about that little Italian place you love? My treat." "Marcus, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted firmly. "Let me take care of the woman I love." As Emma returned to her work, she didn't notice Marcus's phone buzzing insistently in his pocket, or the way his jaw tightened when he finally glanced at the screen. She didn't see the text from his father's assistant. "Mr. Blackwood expects you at the office immediately. Family meeting regarding your recent activities." The secret Marcus had been carrying for months was about to shatter the perfect world they had built together, book by book, dream by dream. The father's verdict: the Blackwood Industries Tower stretched 43 floors into the Seattle sky, its glass and steel facade reflecting the gray clouds that seemed perpetually gathered over the city. Marcus stood in the mahogany-paneled elevator, watching the numbers climb higher while his stomach sank lower. He knew this summons meant his carefully guarded secret was about to explode. Theodore Blackwood sat behind his imposing desk like a king holding court, his silver hair perfectly styled and his charcoal suit pressed to perfection. At 62, he commanded respect through presence alone, broad shoulders, piercing gray eyes, and a voice that had negotiated billion-dollar deals. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city he had helped shape through decades of real estate development. "Close the door." "Marcus," Theodore said without looking up from the financial report spread across his desk. His tone carried the chill of a man unaccustomed to being questioned or defied. Marcus complied, then stood with his hands clasped behind his back. a posture ingrained from childhood when disappointment meant lectures about family honor and responsibility. "Imagine my surprise," Theodore began, finally raising his eyes to meet his son's, "when my security team informed me that the heir to Blackwood Industries has been playing house with a shopkeeper." He pronounced the last word like it tasted bitter. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out about your little romance?" The photographs scattered across the desk showed Marcus and Emma in unguarded moments, holding hands outside her bookstore, sharing gelato at Pike Place Market, kissing under the streetlights after one of their evening walks. Seeing their private joy displayed like evidence in a trial made Marcus's chest tighten with protective anger. "Her name is Emma," Marcus said quietly. "And she's not just a shopkeeper. She's intelligent, kind, hardworking." "She's nobody," Theodore cut him off, standing to his full, imposing height. "Her parents clean office buildings, Marcus. She attended community college on financial aid. This girl has nothing to offer our family except embarrassment." "She offers me happiness," Marcus replied, his voice gaining strength. "Something I haven't felt since Mother died." Theodore's expression softened for just a moment at the mention of his late wife, but quickly hardened again. "Your mother understood duty, son. She came from the right family, moved in the right circles, understood what it meant to represent the Blackwood name. This girl of yours, Emma, she would be eaten alive in our world." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew his father wasn't entirely wrong. Emma's genuine nature and humble background would make her vulnerable to the ruthless social circles his family inhabited. The charity galas, board meetings, and country club events were minefields of subtle class warfare. "I've made some inquiries," Theodore continued, returning to his desk. "Miss Rodriguez's bookstore lease is up for renewal next month. The building owner is a business associate of mine. One phone call from me, and she'll be looking for a new location she can't afford." The threat hit Marcus like a physical blow. Emma's bookstore wasn't just her business. It was her sanctuary, her contribution to the community, her proof that someone from her background could build something meaningful. "You wouldn't," Marcus whispered. "I would. And I will, unless you end this relationship immediately." Theodore's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Furthermore, if you continue to see her after today, I'll ensure she never finds commercial space anywhere in this city. I'll make it impossible for her to get business loans, vendor credit, even employment at other bookstores." Marcus felt the walls closing in. His father had built an empire through calculated ruthlessness, and Marcus had no doubt he would follow through on every threat. The man who had taught him about business strategy and family legacy was now using those same principles to destroy the only genuine happiness Marcus had ever known. "You have until tomorrow to handle this," Theodore said, sitting back down and returning his attention to his reports. "Clean break, son. Convince her it was never serious. Make her believe you were just playing around until you found someone more suitable." That evening, Marcus met Emma at their favorite restaurant, but the cozy Italian place felt like a funeral parlor. Every word felt like swallowing glass as he told her he'd been thinking about their future and realized they wanted different things. He watched her face crumble when he said he wasn't ready for the kind of commitment she deserved. "Is there someone else?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus forced himself to meet her eyes, knowing this lie would haunt him forever. There might be. 3 days later, Emma's bookstore lease was mysteriously not renewed. Years of silence. The rain drummed against the windows of second chapter books as Emma arranged the new releases display, her movements automatic after 3 years of rebuilding her life from the ground up. The bookstore was smaller than her previous one, tucked into a converted house in the Fremont neighborhood. But it was entirely hers. Every shelf, every reading nook, every carefully curated collection reflected her passion for connecting readers with stories that would change their lives. The move had been devastating initially. Losing both Marcus and her original store in the same week had nearly broken her spirit. But Emma had discovered reserves of strength she never knew existed, probably inherited from parents who had worked multiple jobs to give her opportunities they'd never had. She'd taken out a loan using her mother's house as collateral, found this smaller space, and slowly built a loyal customer base who appreciated her genuine love for books and her gift for recommendations. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Riley, wedding invitation came in the mail for you. Looks fancy." Emma frowned, wiping her hands on her apron as she walked to the counter. The envelope was thick cream paper with elegant calligraphy addressing her as Ms. Emma Rodriguez. Inside, gold lettering announced the upcoming marriage of Victoria Blackwood to someone named James Patterson. Victoria Blackwood, Marcus's younger sister. Emma's hands trembled slightly as memories flooded back. She had met Victoria only once, briefly, when the younger woman had stumbled into her old bookstore looking flustered and asking for recommendations on poetry books for a literature class. Victoria had been warm and genuine, with Marcus's same kind eyes, but without the weight of family expectations that had always seemed to press down on his shoulders. The wedding was set for Saturday at the Blackwood family estate. Emma couldn't imagine why she was being invited, unless Victoria had remembered their brief encounter and somehow tracked her down. Or, perhaps, Emma pushed away the thought that Marcus might have suggested including her. That chapter of her life was closed, filed away with other beautiful things that hadn't lasted. The week passed in a blur of indecision. Part of her wanted to ignore the invitation entirely, to protect herself from reopening old wounds. But curiosity won out, along with genuine fondness for the memory of Victoria's infectious enthusiasm for poetry. Saturday arrived with unusual sunshine for Seattle. Emma chose a simple navy dress and drove her aging Honda through the winding roads leading to the Blackwood estate. The property was even more imposing than she had imagined from Marcus's carefully vague descriptions. Sprawling grounds, manicured gardens, and a mansion that looked like it belonged in a period drama. Cars lined the circular driveway, ranging from luxury sedans to sports cars that probably cost more than Emma's annual income. She suddenly felt foolish for coming, but a valet was already approaching to take her keys, and retreat seemed impossible. The interior of the house was elegant but surprisingly warm, filled with fresh flowers and the soft murmur of well-dressed guests. Emma accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and tried to blend into the background, observing the gathered crowd of Seattle's social elite. She didn't see Marcus anywhere, and wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or disappointed. "Emma? Emma Rodriguez?" She turned to see a young woman with familiar dark hair and bright eyes, though Victoria looked more sophisticated now in her bridesmaid dress, her face showing traces of stress despite her smile. "Victoria. Congratulations on your engagement," Emma said warmly. "Thank you so much for inviting me. I have to admit I was surprised to receive the invitation." Victoria's expression flickered with something complex, gratitude mixed with anxiety. "I'm so glad you came. I actually have a confession. I invited you because I remember what you said about books being bridges between different worlds. I'm hoping today you might help me build a bridge of my own." Before Emma could ask what she meant, a commotion erupted from the direction of the main staircase. Raised voices carried across the reception area, and Emma could see guests turning toward the sound with the kind of polite concern that masked deep curiosity. Victoria's face went pale. "Oh no, it's happening again." She grabbed Emma's hand. "Please, will you come with me? I think I'm going to need all the moral support I can get." As they hurried toward the source of the disturbance, Emma had no idea she was about to witness a confrontation that would change not only Victoria's fate, but her own. The sisters' plea. The grand staircase of the Blackwood mansion curved elegantly upward, its mahogany banister polished to mirror brightness. But the scene unfolding on the marble floor below was anything but elegant. Victoria Blackwood knelt on the cold stone, her bridesmaid dress pooling around her like spilled wine. Tears streaming down her face as she looked up at her father with desperate pleading. Theodore Blackwood stood rigid as a statue, his formal wedding attire making him appear even more imposing than usual. His jaw was set in the same immovable line Emma remembered from the few times Marcus had mentioned difficult family discussions. Around them, wedding guests had formed an uncomfortable semicircle, some trying to look away while others watched with barely concealed fascination. "Please, Father," Victoria sobbed, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "James is a good man. He loves me and I love him. Isn't that what matters?" "Get up, Victoria," Theodore commanded in a low voice that somehow carried more authority than shouting would have. "You're making a spectacle of yourself. Then listen to me." Victoria's voice broke. "You can't keep doing this to us. You can't keep deciding who we're allowed to love based on their bank accounts and social connections." Emma felt a chill of recognition. This scene was playing out exactly as it had 3 years ago, just with different players. She glanced around the crowd and spotted a young man near the back, tall, lean, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the slightly rumpled appearance of someone uncomfortable in formal wear. He was watching Victoria with such obvious anguish that Emma knew immediately this had to be James. "A high school English teacher," Theodore said, pronouncing each word like it tasted bitter. "Victoria, you are 24 years old, an heiress to one of the largest development companies on the West Coast. You could have your pick of suitable men, doctors, lawyers, businessmen who understand our world. Instead, you choose to throw your life away on someone who makes $35,000 a year." "Money isn't everything," Victoria cried out, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "James inspires his students every day. He's writing a novel. He volunteers at the Literacy Center on weekends. He makes me laugh, and he makes me want to be a better person." "How is that not enough?" Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Emma noticed some of the older women nodding slightly, while the men mostly looked stern and disapproving, perhaps thinking of their own daughters and the importance of suitable matches. "It's not enough because love doesn't pay bills or maintain social standing," Theodore replied coldly. "Your mother understood this. She came from the right family, moved in the right circles. She knew that marriage in our world is about partnership, building something lasting together." "Mother married you for love," Victoria shot back, struggling to her feet despite her father's command to remain kneeling. "I've seen her letters, her diary entries. She wrote about how her heart raced when she saw you, how you made her feel alive. You're not honoring her memory by crushing that same feeling in your children." Theodore's composure cracked for just a moment, pain flashing across his features before the mask slipped back into place. "Your mother learned to balance love with responsibility. This boy of yours, James, what can he offer you? What kind of life can he provide?" From across the room, James stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. "Mr. Blackwood, I know I can't give Victoria the material things she's used to, but I can promise to love her unconditionally, to support her dreams, to be her partner in building a life that has meaning beyond money." Theodore barely glanced at him. Noble words. But what happens when the novelty wears off? When Victoria realizes she's traded comfort and security for sentiment? When you can't afford the medical bills if she gets sick, or private schools if you have children? Emma felt her heart breaking as she watched the scene unfold. It was like watching her own story through a funhouse mirror. The same controlling father, the same class prejudice, the same impossible choice between love and family approval. Victoria looked around the room desperately, her gaze landing on Emma with surprise and something that might have been hope. Emma Rodriguez? You're here?" The mention of Emma's name caused a ripple through the crowd, and suddenly Theodore's attention snapped to her like a laser. His eyes narrowed as he recognized the woman his son had once loved, the threat he thought he had neutralized years ago. "What is she doing here?" Theodore demanded, his voice dangerous. Victoria straightened her shoulders, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside. "I invited her, because she understands what it's like to love someone this family considers beneath our station. And because she survived what you put her through." The room fell into complete silence. Emma felt every eye turned toward her, and she wanted nothing more than to disappear. But looking at Victoria's tear-stained face, seeing the same desperate hope she had once felt, Emma knew she couldn't abandon this brave young woman to face the family patriarch alone. The front doors of the mansion opened with a soft whoosh, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. Marcus stood silhouetted in the doorway, his broad shoulders tense, his dark hair slightly windswept from driving with the windows down, a habit she remembered from their time together. He was more handsome than ever, But there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a weight that seemed to press down on him like invisible chains. Marcus took in the scene with a single sweeping glance. His sister in tears. His father's thunderous expression, the crowd of guests watching like spectators at a gladiator match. And then his eyes found Emma's across the room, and for a moment time seemed to stop entirely. Love's true worth, the moment stretched between them like a held breath. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes locked on Emma's face, older now, perhaps wiser, but still carrying that gentle strength that had first captivated him. She wore a simple navy dress that brought out the warm brown of her eyes, and her dark hair was pulled back in a way that highlighted the graceful line of her neck. She was beautiful. But more than that, she was real in a room full of people who had forgotten how to be genuine. "Marcus," Theodore said sharply, clearly relieved by his son's arrival. "Perfect timing. Help me explain to your sister why her infatuation with this teacher is completely inappropriate." But Marcus wasn't looking at his father. His gaze moved from Emma to Victoria, who was still standing with tears on her cheeks but chin raised defiantly, to James, who looked like he was preparing to face a firing squad. Marcus had seen this exact scene before, 3 years ago, in a different context but with the same crushing weight of family disapproval. "Victoria," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "Are you happy with him?" The question caught everyone off guard, including Theodore, whose eyebrows drew together in warning. Victoria nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "So happy, Marcus. Happier than I ever thought possible. He makes me feel like I can be myself, not just the Blackwood heiress, but me. Victoria, just Victoria." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding flickering in his eyes. He looked at James then, really looked at him. "And you? Do you love my sister enough to fight for her, even when it's difficult?" James stepped forward without hesitation. "With everything I have, sir. I know I can't give her luxury, but I can give her partnership. I can give her a love that grows stronger every day, not weaker. I can give her the life we choose together, not one chosen for us." "This is ridiculous," Theodore interjected, his voice rising. "Marcus, you of all people should understand the importance of suitable connections. You learned this lesson the hard way." At those words, Marcus finally turned to face his father, and Emma was surprised by the steel in his expression. Gone was the uncertain young man who had broken her heart 3 years ago. This Marcus had weight behind his words, presence that commanded attention. "Did I?" Marcus asked quietly. "Or did I learn that fear makes cowards of us all?" He walked deeper into the room, and the guests unconsciously stepped aside to create a path. Emma found herself holding her breath as he stopped in the center of the circle, equidistant from his father, his sister, and her. "3 years ago," Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I stood in this very house and made a choice. I chose family approval over love. I chose security over happiness. I chose to protect someone I cared about by walking away rather than fighting for what we had together." Theodore's face was growing darker with each word, but Marcus continued undeterred. "I told myself I was being noble, practical, responsible." He turned to look directly at Emma, and her heart clenched at the pain in his eyes. "But I was lying to myself. I was afraid of disappointing you. Father, afraid of standing up to the family legacy, afraid of proving that love could be stronger than wealth." "Marcus," Theodore warned, "but his son wasn't finished. For 3 years, I've watched you run the family business with the same iron control you tried to use on my heart. I've seen you make profitable deals while sacrificing relationships. I've seen you choose financial growth over every other kind of growth." Marcus's voice grew stronger with each word. "And I've been miserable. Completely, utterly miserable." He turned to Victoria, who was watching him with dawning hope. "You asked me if I was happy with James. Let me ask you the same question I should have asked myself years ago. Can you imagine a life without him? Can you picture growing old, looking back, and being satisfied with all the appropriate connections and suitable marriages you made instead?" Victoria shook her head violently. "Never. I'd rather be poor and happy with James than rich and empty without him." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile Emma had seen from him since he'd entered the room. then you already know what you need to do. He turned to face the crowd, his gaze finding Emma again before addressing the room at large. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Emma Rodriguez. 3 years ago, she owned a bookstore, loved poetry, made the most incredible coffee, and had dreams of building a simple, honest life, filled with books and laughter and children who would grow up knowing they were loved unconditionally. His voice grew quiet, intimate despite the crowd. She was also the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too much of a coward to fight for her. Emma felt tears building in her eyes as Marcus continued. Emma taught me that wealth without love is just expensive loneliness. She taught me that a person's worth isn't measured in bank accounts or social connections, but in kindness, integrity, and the courage to be genuine in a world that rewards pretense. He looked directly at his father now. You want to know what James can offer Victoria that a wealthy suitor can't? He can offer her the chance to be truly known, to be loved for who she is, not what she represents, to build something together that has meaning beyond profit margins. Theodore's composure was cracking. You don't understand the responsibilities. I understand them perfectly, Marcus interrupted. I also understand that a family business built on crushing the happiness of the family members isn't worth preserving. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. But Marcus held up a hand for silence. Victoria, he said, turning back to his sister, marry James. Marry him tomorrow if you want to. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to take it up with me. He looked at Emma one more time, his expression vulnerable in a way she remembered from their quiet moments together. As for me, I have 3 years of cowardice to make up for, if it's not too late. Emma felt the weight of every eye in the room, but for the first time in years, she didn't care about anyone else's opinion. The man who had broken her heart was standing before her, offering not just an apology, but a public declaration that their love had been real, had been worth fighting for. Theodore started to speak, but Victoria's voice cut through his words. It's not too late, Marcus. For any of us, it's not too late. Emma took a step forward, then another, until she was standing close enough to see the hope and fear warring in Marcus's eyes. You're right, she said softly, her voice somehow carrying clearly through the silent room. It's not too late, but this time, we fight together. Behind them, Victoria took James's hand and smiled through her tears. Around them, the wedding guests watched in fascination as love chose itself over convention once again. And Theodore Blackwood, for perhaps the first time in his adult life, found himself wondering if he had been wrong about what truly mattered.